You're listening to London Greek Radio, and this programme has previously been broadcast, providing you with the opportunity to listen again to a show which you may have missed on LGR.
Good evening, we have a brand new show for you here. This is the first show following the pilot last month. It's called All About Autism, and we intend to be here every first Thursday of the month, talking about autism-related topics with members of the London Autism charity. Now, did you notice that more children have autism these days? New figures find that 1 in 21 children are now thought to be autistic, and 1 in 14 are boys and 1 in 41 girls. To put this into context, in the 80s the figures were around 1 in 10,000, and in 40 years diagnosis has gone up extremely rapidly, and research is still trying to work out why. These figures are from Northern Ireland, who update and publish their figures every year. The National Autistic Society only publishes every 7 years, which is why they still say it's 1 in 100 and doesn't include the under 18s, which means they have a 25-year time lag. In other words, the number of children and adults diagnosed with autism is climbing. Some leading autistic experts state that it's likely to be the case that there are as many autistic people as there are with green eyes. I'm Helen Mikellides. Today I will be talking to Sophia Christophi, who is autistic herself, and Ellie Kolatsi, a mother of an autistic son, who are both members of the charity, who were present on last month's show. And I'm also pleased to welcome Dr. Chris Papadopoulos, a lecturer in public health at the University of Bedfordshire, who is one of the founders of the charity. Before I forget, I'd like to thank our engineer Tony Neofidou for helping us out this evening. Now, if you're an autistic person, child or adult, or have an autistic relative, or even if you don't, we'd love to hear from you, either during the show or afterwards, ahead of next month's show. Tell us what you think. Let us know your ideas. Does anything we're speaking about resonate with you? So you can contact us email us on studio@lgr.co.uk, or send us a text or WhatsApp message on 0737 661 1033. That's 0737 661 1033, or find us on Facebook, London Greek Radio, or follow us on Twitter and comment there at LGR1033. Now, I stand corrected. I've just been told by Dr. Chris Papadopoulos that I didn't say it correctly. It's the London Autism Group charity, not the London Autism charity. So sorry about that, Chris.
No problem at all. You can see I'm fussy.
Obviously. Okay, so give us a brief explanation of the charity services and the charity that you founded and why you are here today.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really honoured and very thankful to LGR. I think it's a great opportunity to talk to the Greek and Greek Cypriot community and other communities listening about, what autism is, what neurodiversity is, and why it's important that we destigmatise it and increase our understanding. And that's really what the charity is about. The London Autism Group charity is something that I founded the end of 2017, and over the last few years we've been very, very busy working on our various services, all of which are about promoting social acceptance of autistic people and family carers, social inclusion of autistic people and family carers, and crucially the reduction of autism stigma and discrimination, which unfortunately is quite rife. That's the reality of it, and that's why the charity is here, to really destigmatise and give autistic people the fair chance that they deserve in society. Also, we have many, many services, so you can access all of the information about the services on our website, which is londonautismgroupcharity.org. But very briefly, we do a lot of mental health work. So something that we do, for example, is that we commission autistic people who are experts themselves in mental health and well-being to work with other autistic people who are very sort of vulnerable and struggling with their mental health, to work with them and give them expert support and guide them through their crisis or whatever journey that they're experiencing. We found that to be particularly effective because generic mental health support doesn't often work very effectively, we found, with autistic people. So you really need the autistic experts doing it. We also have a very large and successful befriending scheme where we pair autistic people who are lonely with other autistic people that volunteer for us, and a successful community cafe, which is all about bringing people together. We've recently launched the Greek and Greek Cypriot arm of the charity, and this is something we're really excited about because we want to focus on the Greek and Greek Cypriot community and try and destigmatise autism specifically in our community, and that's why we're here really to talk about autism on this show. And this is really where Sophia and Ellie come into it, because they very kindly agreed to co-lead the arm of the charity, that Greek and Greek Cypriot arm of the charity. And perhaps Sophia and Ellie might want to say something about that particular arm of the charity. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'd like to help the Greek community understand more about autism and promote social inclusion and acceptance of Greek autistic people. This is the first big Greek-specific autism acceptance drive, and along with our Greek Community Cafe and this radio show, we're planning to produce an online toolkit for the Greek community to help develop the community's understanding of autism.
Amazing, thank you so much. I'm really excited for all the things that we're going to be doing.
Lovely.
And Ellie? Would you like to say something?
Just to reiterate what Sophia said, I think it's really important. Thanks for having us, LGR, and hosting this show. I think it's vital that we get out our message and destigmatise and help with awareness and understanding.
Definitely.
Which we definitely must do. But as time goes by, I'm sure we'll achieve it. And just to add to Chris's information about the London Autism Group charity website, there's also a Facebook page, which is very, very interesting. I was scrolling through the other day, and it's so interactive. There are over 3,000 members, and there's so much information on schools, on absolutely everything on there. So if you want to go to that, it's the London Autism Group charity Facebook page. Now we're going to hear some stories. So Sophia's going to tell her story first. So Sophia, over to you.
I'm Sophia. I'm currently doing my PhD at the University of Hertfordshire in psychology with a specific focus on autism research. I didn't find out that I'm autistic until I was 16. And over the last few years, alongside my studies, I've been giving talks to parents, carers and professionals about autism to help them better understand how to support the autistic people they interact with. I've also spent some time tutoring young autistic people, and I'm always open with my students about being autistic, and it often helps them to know that I get it and that I've been where they are now.
Great.
I'd like young autistic people to be able to embrace autism as a positive part of their identity, and for them to know that it doesn't need to be something they feel negatively about, which can be quite hard when other people don't understand autism. But hopefully we can change this and make society a more accepting and inclusive place for autistic people. So
you're leading by example. Very, very good.
That's such a great story. I don't know if I can top that, but I love it. So pre-twin, I worked in many different schools in inner city London, working with children and adolescents, offering therapeutic interventions, also a school counsellor. Also worked for a mental health charity for children, adolescents and families, co-facilitating webinars for parents and carers. And now I'm really interested in autism, and since my child's diagnosis, I'm listening and learning and going on the podcasts at the London Autism Group charity, and that's where I do quite a lot of my learning, so there's a plug there. It's really interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. So how old is your child, Ellie?
So they are 8.
They're both, the twins are 8, and
8.
It's your son, isn't it,
yeah,
that's
my son's
autistic?
Diagnosed, yeah.
Okay, and how old was he when he was diagnosed?
4.
Okay, and he's been diagnosed for 4 years.
Yes.
And does he have an educational health care plan at school? So he's getting the help that he needs. So Chris also has a story.
Yeah, so my sort of entrance into the world of autism, I suppose, began in 2013 when my eldest son, who's now 12, at the time he was 3, and that's when he got his diagnosis. So that was when we started really entering the world of autism for the first time. I didn't really know too much about autism actually back then, so it was quite a big shock when we found out that he was autistic, and going through that journey of parenthood that we didn't perhaps expect. And it was a tough time. It was quite an isolating time, confusing time. I was quite anxious, quite scared, didn't have many people to connect with. And that was really what really led me to forming the London Autism Group, because I thought, well, you know what, if I can't find people to connect with, because I just couldn't, I thought I'll just solve this myself and form the Facebook group that you mentioned, Helen, before, the London Autism Group, which was really successful, built up many members very, very quickly. And then in 2017, I decided to take it further and launch the charity, because the Facebook group is great, but a charity is even better. We can do so much more. So that's my story. I should also add that I'm a lecturer in public health, and one of the advantages of my job is I get to do some academic research similar to what Sophia's doing with her PhD. So through my job now, I can leverage my experiences of being a parent of an autistic child. In fact, I have 2 autistic children now. My youngest, my 6-year-old currently, he's autistic and has a diagnosis as well. So I leverage my experiences, my work through the charity to conduct really important, hopefully important, autism-related research through the University of Bedfordshire that I work at. So come at it with different hats.
Fantastic. That's really, really productive, really, really useful. I just wanted to talk about my own experiences with my son. I have a 12-year-old son now. He's nearly 13. And it was quite the experience getting the diagnosis. The next show that we do is going to be focused on the diagnoses, but I just thought I'd say a little bit first. Now, for every parent who is told that their child has autism or is autistic, it's a little bit, there are a series of emotions that you go through and thoughts as well, because back then it wasn't really that common. It wasn't really all around us as the way it is now and picked up on, but it was picked up on by a nursery teacher when he was at preschool, when he was 3 years old. Now, when he was very, very small, we just spoke to him in Greek so that he'd pick up the language, and we just thought that, and he didn't really speak, and he didn't actually speak properly until he was 4, almost 4, and we just thought it was because we'd spoken to him in Greek, and then he'd gone to nursery, and he was just hearing a different language and got a little bit confused. They say that bilingual children speak later, but he didn't just pick up a word and then another word and then just string a couple of words together. He literally went from not speaking at all to speaking in full sentences, which was incredible. He just caught me off guard one day. He actually insulted a child at the bus stop, aged 4. I'm not going to say what he said, but it was quite embarrassing. But that aside, it was picked up by a nursery nurse, and she said that he was displaying certain behaviours, and I didn't know what she was talking about. She decided to call the area Senko in. I didn't even know what Senko was, let alone an area Senko. So a lady came from the nursery head office, and she was very, very nice, and she said, we want you to go and see this doctor, Dr. Elaine Clark at the Edgware Hospital. She's an educational psychologist, because we've got a few concerns about your son. So I thought, fine, okay, these are the experts. Now, I've never really been around children, so I don't know much about child development. I just, knew about my own child. So when we got the diagnosis, he was displaying a few behaviours. He was covering his ears in shops and things like that, and screaming at the top of his lungs to this really high pitched scream for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and scaring everybody. But I just thought it was just something that children do. So he actually did that in the doctor's office. And she did a few tests and played a couple of games with him, and then she said he's got high function. I know you, Chris. I know you don't like the title high functioning or low functioning, but he's got high functioning autism. So I thought she was joking. I personally thought she was joking, and I didn't quite know what to say. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "No, it's not. It's because he speaks 2 languages. He's fine. Because it just didn't seem." I didn't know what I was looking for, and he just didn't seem out of the ordinary for me, apart from all the high pitch screaming and the late speech. But that's my story, and it's been a hell of a journey from nursery through to primary school. We've just taken it a year at a time, and dealt with the experts and listened to people, and every year is different. Every year is a new challenge. So and as we've gone along, I've learned more and more about autism, and it's just been a hell of a roller coaster. That's all I can say. And now we've got to puberty, so now we've got our different problems, and because he's not recognising certain hormonal changes, so he tends to kind of lose his rag a little bit, So that's basically my story at the moment. I've got plenty of stories to tell with regards to school and his transition to secondary school, but we'll come back to that another time. So we're going to go over to Ellie's story.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Helen. So much of what you said has resonated, and as you're speaking, it's quite emotive actually listening to your story, so thank you. So before I start speaking about my son, I've got his permission to talk about him. I think it's important to respect that. He said, yes, it's fine to talk about the autism. So he was about 1.5, 2 when we started to recognise that he had some significant problems. He would also scream and cup his ears at loud noises. Also, we recognised that he had difficulty expressing himself, and he would get frustrated and upset quite a lot, and his language wasn't developed. I know we shouldn't compare, but I was comparing him to his twin. But it was when he went to nursery that nursery staff picked up his challenges, and they were really supportive and helpful. And that was when they suggested to make a referral to the paediatrician. And yes, we went for it, and also speech and language. And as you say, it's a challenging time, and it was quite distressing and isolating. We waited 18 months for an appointment, and he was diagnosed autistic on his fourth birthday. We were just left wondering what's next. What do we do, really? So I'll talk about this a bit later, but it's important to have the right network around you.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important when Chris says about the community cafe where you reach out to other parents. It's so important to share in a non-judgmental space. I think that's really key, and that's what's helped us, because we just listen and learn actually from other people's experience, and that's really helped us actually.
It's really nice to be with parents of other parents of autistic children.
Yeah.
I myself went for the first time a couple of weeks ago in Southgate.
Yeah.
St Michael's, is it?
St Thomas's.
Oh, St Thomas's Church. Sorry, opposite Asda.
Yeah.
On a Sunday, and met some of the other parents of autistic children, and they brought the children along as well, and it was really, really nice. We sat down, we had a chat, we shared our experiences, information. It's just a really nice place to be, and just a safe place to be with the children as well, wandering around doing their own things as well. It was just really, really nice, and it'll be nice when we have a Greek cafe.
Yeah,
where are we going to do this? Do you know?
I'm looking around currently for various options. We have a couple of options on the plate, but the long and short of it is we will soon have a community cafe drop-in initiative running specifically for the Greek community. I mean, it'll be primarily aimed at the Greek community. So if you're listening and you want to learn more about autism, or you think you may be autistic, or your child might be autistic, and you just want to connect with people locally, and other Greeks in particular, then definitely drop by and meet us and meet other people. But it won't be completely for Greek. It'll be primarily. But
we've got listeners who aren't Greek tonight.
Yeah, anyone can
all over
drop
the
by.
world. But especially in London, we've got other people listening. So
everybody's welcome. Anyone's welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think the nice thing about your two stories is that the particularly good thing is that both of you were able and fortunate enough to get an early diagnosis, for your children. That makes a big difference. Definitely. I suppose this may be a good time to bring in Sophia, because unfortunately for Sophia, you were you weren't sort of able to get the early diagnosis. Did you, Sophia? You were diagnosed a little bit later.
I wasn't diagnosed until I was 16, and although I had a lot of struggles before then, I managed to kind of keep it all at bay. But around that age, a lot of things started to change at school. Social demands were increasing, and it became much harder to sort of manage some of my difficulties, which led to various conversations with teachers at school and somebody suggesting that I might be autistic.
Who suggested it?
It was the deputy head teacher at my school. He'd worked with lots of other autistic young people, and when we'd had a meeting and I talked about some of the things that I was struggling with, he said that it reminded him very much of some of the people that he'd worked with, and I didn't really know anything about autism then. So
he engaged initially with you with that conversation, not your parents. Right, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so looking back now, I think some of the reasons why I wasn't diagnosed sooner were because of awareness of autism in the 90s wasn't as good as it is today, although we still have quite a long way to go. I met all my developmental milestones as well, so I was walking and talking and doing all the things that were expected of me at that age. I was quite interested in like books and computers, and I didn't really struggle academically, so it never got picked up earlier in school settings. And a lot of my traits were just put down to my personality, so people said that I was quiet and shy, and I was just really sensible for my age. But I also had quite an awareness that I felt different to people around me, so I tried to hide how anxious I was. And I think with autism sometimes it can present a bit differently in girls, or girls might be more likely to mask some of their traits. So it was a while before I found out that I'm autistic.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of girls unfortunately get a late diagnosis or don't get diagnosed at all, unfortunately, often because of the masking. Yeah,
for girls 16 isn't even considered a late diagnosis anymore. There's ladies in their 30s and 40s that are being diagnosed now, so mine is actually quite early, quite good, in comparison.
It's not ideal, but it's earlier than many other people. Yeah, and you're lucky to have got one at all, I suppose, as well. Yeah. The masking must be very, very difficult. I think we'll have a whole episode on masking.
Definitely,
maybe.
That's got to be done. That's so complex.
Such a crucial part of it all, and it has a big impact on mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose that was a difficult aspect for it, was it?
I think that was just my coping mechanism, not to show how difficult things were for me, but then it would take a toll in that when I was at home, it was hard for me to control the anxiety because I'd spent all day trying to keep it in, and then it just becomes challenging.
My son self-regulates when he comes out of a social situation. If he masks literally all day. When he goes out to school or wherever he's going, anywhere, even if he's going to go somewhere and he's aware that he's going to go somewhere and meet somebody and be in somebody's company who he doesn't know and doesn't feel comfortable with, he'll just go into this kind of how can I describe it? It's like an acting mode, so masking mode really, and he finds it quite stressful. He finds it actually very, very stressful. So we've definitely got to do an episode of this show on masking, because
if listeners are wondering what exactly masking is, it is what you just said in a way. It's acting. It's presenting yourself as someone that you think society or whoever it is that whatever context or setting that you're in wants you to be, a certain kind of person, and not actually who you are. So it takes a lot of effort, either consciously or unconsciously. And then, the result of that is when you go home and you're in your safe space, you take your mask off and you're you're your own person again, can have quite a rebounding effect. You can be struggling with your mental health, or you have a big kind of burnout or shutdown as a result. So it's really interesting but important stuff.
Very, very important. You can text or WhatsApp us on 0737 661 1033. 07337 661 1033, or find us on Facebook, London Greek Radio, and leave your comments either while the show is going on or after the show before the next show, which is in a month. So we're going to talk to Sophia next about her school challenges and how she got on at school, primary and secondary.
So I had quite a mixed experience with school. On one hand, I really enjoyed the routine, the structure. I loved learning. Wearing a school uniform was great for me because it was the same every day. All the other kids hated uniform, but it was good for me. But with that comes lots of challenges as well, because schools are crowded, they're noisy, there's lots of unexpected changes, especially in secondary school.
Yes.
And because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 16, I didn't have any support with the transition from primary school to secondary school. So I went from my safe little primary school with one class per year group to...
With all the children you grew up with?
Yeah, exactly. To a huge secondary school where I didn't really know anybody. So that was...
And changing classrooms every hour, every 2 hours, to different places, different sights, different sounds, different smells.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a sensory, it's a chaotic sensory experience, isn't it? Being in school, all the noises, all the smells, as you say, all the different things. One of the things we found during COVID, we had a lot of people contacting us, a lot of parents in particular contacting us and telling us that during COVID, when the lockdowns happened and we were all homeschooling, a lot of the secondary school children, their mental health actually significantly improved because all of a sudden they were, in their safe space. They weren't trying to, meet all the expectations and demands, and they didn't need to camouflage and mask every day.
Yeah.
Of course, that wasn't, it varies from person to person, and we've got to avoid being stereotyping. But a lot of parents did tell us that. So
there was a lot of strategies that I had to put in place in school. So, like, I always needed to be by an exit because I didn't like to feel sort of lost in the crowd, or I would know when the school bell was about to go off, so I would time it so that I could be outside before it went off. Otherwise, it's just all day bleeping in between lessons and people pulling their chairs across the room, and it is a lot of sensory information in school.
Did they make special provisions for you during secondary school? I mean, you were 16 when you were diagnosed, but
yeah, so it wasn't until I got into sixth form that I started to have more help with things like that, especially with the transition to university, because I then did have a diagnosis. It was easier for them to help me plan the next steps to university. So we visited the campus. I met all the people that I would have as my tutors when I started there. All of that stuff that would have been really good going from primary to secondary school that I didn't have access to because I didn't have a diagnosis.
And we take for granted all the things that mount up all the way through school for an autistic child. For example, when my son was, they gave him the one-to-one that he needed, but they didn't quite know what to do because no two autistic children are exactly the same. So when they were just trying to find their way with him, they brought somebody in, and part of the time, and she spent a lot of time trying to figure out who he was. So one of the issues were he would go a little bit, he would just not tolerate the lunch hour so well, I was told, after school, because they'd always give me feedback after school. He went to a wonderful primary school, Our Lady of Muswell, and they were very, very accommodating. And one thing I said was, I think it's the acoustics in the dinner hall that are setting him off, because of these high ceilings that they had, and it wasn't really soundproofed very well, and there were so many children coming in and out. They only had the one hall, so in the end they allowed him to sit in the classroom and eat his food and then go outside. And it was wonderful. So for you, Sophia, it must have been very, very hard in that situation.
Yeah, there wasn't really any accommodations like that, and even though I knew that things like that may have helped me, I didn't feel able to ask for those things because I was still trying to figure out why I couldn't tolerate these rooms when everybody else could. So I didn't want to sort of draw attention to myself in that way, so I just tried my best to get through it.
To fit in.
Yeah, it's interesting that so a lot of your challenges sound like they were, obviously not all of them, but a lot of it was due to the sensory processing issues that you had in the environment. And that's one of the main, things to talk about when we talk about autism, really, is that, we've got to remember that autistic people do have often what's called a spiky sensory profile. So that means that, autistic people often are particularly sensory seeking. So they're looking to experience a sense perhaps more strongly than neurotypical or non-autistic people would, or the sensory avoidant, where it's the other way around, where they're looking to avoid strong sensory input. So that sounds like what perhaps happened with you in terms of the auditory noises. That particular sense, you were trying to avoid it because it was too strong.
Yeah, definitely a lot of sensory hypersensitivity in my case, even with things like clothing, how things feel, sounds, too much bright light. I'm definitely a sensory avoider. Yeah.
But what I love about your story, Helen, is that, it sounds like the people at your school, the help that you got, it sounded very good. That they really tried to get to understand, who your son is, enter his world. And that's the most important thing. You've got to enter the child's world. You've got to see the world as much as you can through his or her eyes.
That's true.
That's crucial. Rather than trying to place your own expectations and pressures and what you want on the child.
And try to force them into a box that just doesn't fit.
Yeah. So it sounds like you got that support to some extent. So that's really good.
I was very, very lucky. I had to trust them 100% because the school doesn't really like it when you get involved, and they don't want you sort of poking your nose in every 5 minutes. They just want you to leave it to them. It wasn't the same story when he went to secondary school, but I can elaborate on that later.
Oh dear.
So
it's such a lottery, isn't it, really? It's the, with the quality of the schools, the quality of the SENCO being the special educational needs coordinator. So that's the key person in the school who's going to coordinate any additional needs that the child has in response to their education. So how we're going to tailor their educational experience to meet their needs. So it's a lottery as to the quality of the SENCO, the quality of the teachers, the quality of the overall school,
whether they use the money that they're given.
Yeah, whether they use the money
child.
they're given. Yeah, that's right. So it is a big lottery, unfortunately, which is why we need, a strong sense of community, amongst all of us, autistic parents, to support each other through what is often a pretty
siblings.
Difficult time. Yeah, and siblings as well, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How do you find your middle child who isn't autistic?
Yeah, so he's not autistic, but he has, because he's a sibling, he has, I would say, his own unique set of challenges, because he, for example, struggles with the idea that he looks after his older brother. He's not the oldest brother, and he's sort of got this expectation, perhaps from his friends, that the oldest should, look after or keep an eye and have that kind of role with their younger sibling. But in his case, he doesn't feel that, and that's quite difficult for him. He's only 10, to feel that. It's quite...
He's sandwiched between two of them.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And so he's anxious, he's anxious about their futures and his potential place in the relationship between the three of them, and sometimes he gets frustrated, and then of course there's the he's very tuned in to whether or not he's getting less attention. Are we giving more attention to our autistic children compared to him? So we have to be really on top of that, because he'll pick that up. So
and he's the middle child.
Yeah, he's got the middle child thing as well. So we have to be really careful with the siblings, and for sure we'll have an episode focused on siblings, for sure, because their mental health, a lot of the research tells us that the mental health of siblings of autistic people can be particularly, unfortunately, quite vulnerable. So we'll have a particular episode focused on that.
Mm-hmm. And if I can just say, there are, for people who are listening who are not too educated about autism, there are some, the good thing is that the BBC and Netflix, they're making a lot of fictional series about autistic families with an autistic child. Atypical, have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Seen it?
Watched a little bit of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And the A Word. The A Word was BBC.
Yeah.
BBC, and it was interesting what you said about the sensory overstimulation that was needed. There was a scene where they were driving, because it's set in Yorkshire, and it's a winter's night. It's absolutely freezing outside, and the boy's sitting in the back of the car while the mum's driving, and he's got the window wide open. I remember, and it's really, really cold in the car, and she's basically trying to tell him to close the window, and he just won't close the window. And just these little details of what an autistic parent goes through. It was really well done, actually. Really, really well done. And also there's a book called The Reason I Jump, which was written by a Japanese boy. I should have his name somewhere. I haven't written it down, but I don't know where it's gone. And it's been translated into lots of different languages. It's literally a world bestseller, and it's about his experiences, why he does certain things like stimming and things like that. I have actually read the book, but they've actually made a film of it now on Disney Plus. So
yeah, I know the producer.
Do you?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, no, sadly, but I've helped advertise it.
Oh, brilliant. See, you're a dark horse. So, Ellie, have you got anything to say about the right environment of schools for autistic children?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the right environment is so important, hugely important. I mean, we've been really lucky. We've got amazing friends. Just a shout out to Kathleen and Marion, who have helped us navigate the system and pick us up mentally and physically when on those really challenging days. And I think you kind of know what I'm talking about when you don't know what to do or what to say, and you just need respite.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to the end of the show now, and we are going to be back next month. Please let us know. I'll just repeat the numbers: 0737 661 1033 if you'd like to text or WhatsApp us, or Facebook London Greek Radio, or call the studio 0208 346 3345. We promise not to put you on air if you call during a show, but we'd love to know your feedback on the show and what you thought. And if you want us to cover any subjects in particular, we'd love to hear that. And also, we'll be talking to other professionals later on in these episodes of the show. So we'd like to say thank you to all of you who listened. Stay with us. We hope that you take advantage of the website, the London Autism Group charity website. I would love to say thank you to Dr. Chris Papadopoulos and Ellie and Sophia for being here today, and also to Tony Neofidou, who's been our studio engineer for the day. I forgot him last time. I'm so sorry, Tony.
Thank you.
You're listening to London Greek Radio, and the programme you just heard had previously been broadcast, providing you with the opportunity to listen again to a show which you may have missed on LGR.